Hello students, welcome back to your class on file systems. So last class we had discussed about what is a file, what are the attributes of the file, what are the operations that can be performed on a file, and we also saw your directory structure, activities on the directory structure, and various directory structures, its advantages and disadvantages. Now proceeding with the chapter, the next topic we have is about your file system mounting. So what is about file system mounting? If I want to use the file system should be first mounted. That is, if I want to use a file, the file must be opened. Only after I open a file I can be doing the operations on file, that is to read, write or to search, anything for me to do, the file must be first opened. Similarly, a file system must be mounted before it can be available to processes on the system. So where do I mount this file system? So I shall be mounting this file system on a mount point. That is a location within the file structure where the file system is to be attached. Now let us see what is the procedure of mounting the file system. Now the operating system shall be given with the name of the device and the mount point. The operating system verifies that the device contains a valid file system. It does so by asking the device driver to read the device directory, and that verifies the directory has the expected format. The operating system notes it in the directory structure that a file system is mounted on a specified point. Now let me illustrate the same here. Now let us assume this is the file system that you have in your system. Now let me put it this way. You have your system, your desktop that is available with you. You already have a file system, or if I have to put it in simplified terms, when you open to the file explorer, you have a list of directories, files and everything that is there in that. Now I insert a pen drive. Fine. Now that pen drive also has some folders, files and everything within that. Correct? Now this pen drive that you have inserted, now the operating system, so what was the mount procedure telling? The operating system first verifies the device. So it is going to verify your pen drive, and the device driver is going to see if there is a specific file system that could be adopted to your file system. Now if this is the file system that is existing and this is the file system that your pen drive has, now this should be mounted here, only then you will be given access. Now if you notice, when you insert your pen drive, it takes few minutes actually to get started. So again, here we give a mount point. You can notice it here, there are two independent file systems. Now if I want to use this, I should mount it on a mount point. So what is my mount point? My mount point happen to be the user. So you can see here, so it is starting from here. Now I am mounting this on the user. So now I will have it as root user and then Jane docs program. So this is how we will be mounting the file we will be mounting the file system to the available file system structure. So once the mounting is successful, only then it is available for the user to access the file. The next thing that we have is about your file sharing. So file sharing is something that is required, and that is something that is supported by the file system as well. So when does sharing of file happen? When there are multiple users are available, that is when file sharing is required. But when the file sharing is done, we must make sure that is some protection scheme is available, that it is protecting the files, and the sharing must happen in some authenticated manner. So there are various ways to share the file. We could do it on a distributed system over a network, or we could be using the network file system, which is one of the methods that is used in the distributed system. Now let us see various ways how the file sharing is happening, and also to the end we will see what is the protection mechanism that could be followed. So in a multi-user environment, file sharing can be done in two ways. The first one is where the system can allow any user to access the file. So there could be a repository of files available, and any user other than the creator could be accessing where it is in a shared mode. The other method is where you allow the user to use a specific file based on the grant access. That is, the user may have something like the owner and group. So the owner could be granting some specific actions. That is, just to give you a simplified example for you to understand. Now if I am creating a file on the Google Drive, I can be granting access only to view, or I can be granting access to view as well as edit. I can be granting access to comment. So I can grant access to a set of people to view. I can grant access to a set of people to edit. So that is what I mean to grant access to a required set of users. So you already know now each user is using you shall be identified by the user ID, and the user shall be setting the permissions, and the group IDs is where you set a permission to a particular set of group. Now if I say group ID 1, you allow read, write, execute, whereas group ID 2 is a read only. So write and execute shall be disabled. So this is how where you will be sharing a file and you will be giving access only to a particular group. The next thing that we have is about file sharing in a remote file system. So it allows a computer, what happens in a remote file system, it allows a computer to mount one or more file system from one or more remote machines. So what are the techniques that is used to do so? So there are three ways of doing it. One is by manually sending a file via using your FTP, that is a file transfer protocol, and the other one is by using your distributed file system where a remote directory is visible from a local machine. So the other type is using your web or www. So these are some of the techniques where we could be mounting a file system remotely or on a remote machine, or we could access the file that is there on a remote machine. So in this direction, the other technique that we have is your client server model. So the client server model allows the client to mount a remote file system from a server. The machine containing the files is your server, and the machine seeking to access the files would be your client. A server can serve multiple clients, and the client can also access or send request to multiple servers. The server specifies which file or resource are available to which client. So there are some servers which could be serving, for example, a client is asking for a request of a file access. There are some files a client could access. There are some files that a client is not allowed to access. The client is given access to a particular file only if it is allowed to access that particular file. A client can specify the IP address or the network name by which it could be sending the request. The difficulty of this model is the identification of the client, and some of the protocols that could be used is your NFS, CIFS, and these are the most two popular protocol that is used for file transfer, and both of it has its own advantages and disadvantages. And the other way where the files could be shared is your distributed information system. So one of the best examples of your distributed information system is your DNS. What is DNS? It is the domain name system, that is nothing but your www. So you can get connected to a particular domain, and whenever you request for the domain, the name is resolved on a server, and that will give you the IP address that will connect you to a particular domain or the other website where you could be accessing your file. Having spoke about various file sharing, that is file sharing in the local disk and file sharing in the remote location, let us see about the failures that could happen in file sharing. A simple example that I could give to understand what could be a failure. There could be failure even when you're storing it on a local disk. There could be a failure when you're storing it in a remote location as well. Now, for example, I want to share a file with you, and let me tell it is on my laptop, and my laptop has crashed. So what is the thought that I will get? Or there is some power failure, or there is something that I am not able to use my laptop and my laptop is failed. Now I want to share that file with you. The thought I would get is, why not I would have put this file on drive, because my local copy of that file is failed. Now when I take the counterpart of it, now I want to share a file locally where I could just copy to a pen drive and give it to you, and I do not have that copy of file with me on the laptop. I have it in the Gmail or my Google Drive, let me say. and there is no internet connection that I have. So at that point of time, what is that I would feel is I should have probably had a copy locally, so that I would have just copied it to a pen drive and given it to you. So failure is possible even if the file is stored locally. There could be the failure of the hardware or the system where it could be stopping from accessing the file. And when I say the file is stored in a remote location, still then there could be a failure where you're not able to access the file due to the network issue or the network failure. But these are some of the examples that I gave where the file is there but you're not able to access at that instance of time. But what if the file is failed during the transmission, or what if the file is corrupted on the disk? There should be some recovery mechanisms which allows us to recover from the failure. One of the examples that I could give is probably when you are using your MS Office and there is a sudden shutdown of your system that happens, and probably you have not saved your work, and the next time you restart you get a pop-up message telling that do you want to recover the file. So this file will be stored in another temporary storage, so it will be recovering the file from that temporary storage. That will happen in case of your local failure. In case of remote failure, your data will be passed by the protocol. If there happens to be any failure, the protocol allows you to recover your file or data. The other issue that we have with file sharing is about your data consistency. So as I have told you earlier also when we were discussing about synchronization, so data consistency becomes really critical when there is any file or there is any data that is there in a shared mode. That is when there are multiple users trying to access the same data, then probably there are chances that there will be a wrong data that could be read. The changes would not be reflected. So there must be methods that is also going to maintain the semantics of consistency. So in file sharing, we discussed about how a file is shared on a single user, on a multiple user. The other thing that we look to is the protection scheme. So how could be there a access control towards the file? So access control is one of the protection mechanisms that is used. So when information is stored on the system, we should make sure that the information is safe from any physical damages, and there should be a proper access also for that particular file. Now, when I say there should be protection, the other word that comes with protection is reliability. What is reliability? Even if there is a fault or failure, the system should continue to execute. How could I do that? Reliability in case of your file sharing can be achieved by duplicating or having multiple copies of your file. So if one of the copy is corrupted or one of the copy is lost, I could still get it with another copy. Or the the protection mechanism we do is where we take the backup of the data. That is again nothing but you're creating a duplicate copy of your data. When it is a single user and there is a single owner who is using the system, you could just take a backup of your data to a CD drive or CD, and then you can just put it safe. But what if that same system is used by multiple users? If I say in the case of the companies, there is one person using the system in the morning, there is another person using the system in the noon and night and all of it. So how do you ensure that the data that you created for that time that you use the system is safe? That is when we control the access towards the data or the file that is created. Now, what are the possible types of access that we could have? A person could open a file to read, write, or execute the file, or append the file, that is add a new content through the file, or he could delete a file, or in case of directory, he or she would wish to list the files in a directory. Now these accesses should happen in a controlled manner. Now what do I mean by the controlled manner is, you have a list of access that is to the group or to the list of users you want to grant the access to. So all these days I was telling, there was a couple of slides before in the previous class I was talking about your read, write, execute many a times. So this is how it is. Now I have read, write, execute. So the owner has all the permissions of read, write and execute. You can see here for the group access, I am disabling execute. It has only read and write. For the public, I am disabling read and write. I am enabling and execute. So this is a way where I could decide whom I could be granting what type of access. This is a glimpse what happens in your Unix system. And just to elaborate the same, you can see here, whenever I run my ls-l, probably this is the result that you get. And this was something that I spoke about when I was discussing about your file attributes as well. So here you have the type of file, the first column, then you have the file access. You can see here 3, 3 and 3. So this is for the user, group and others that we saw here. Can you see here? Owner access, group access and public access. So that is the user, group and others permission that is given for a particular file. And then we have the user ID and then the username, timestamp and the file name with its location. So these are the attributes that we have. What is that I'm emphasizing here is about the access control. You can see here there is only read, write permission, no execute, and then no write and execute to others in this last case. So that is what is the access permission to this particular file. So eventually we could be doing it for all the files, and we could be changing these access control also using the command chmod. And here is the illustration of the same. So you could be changing it by giving, this is treated as the binary equivalent. So by giving that number is where you could be changing the access to that particular file. And the same thing when I take it in case of Windows. Windows uses access control list. So it gives you the list of users and what is the access that they can make. Now you can see here system, and there is another user, administrator, file admin. Now each of them, it is going to allow and deny some of the permissions. If it may allow to modify or it may deny to modify. So this is the way how the access control or the protection mechanism can be done using your Windows. So this was about the file sharing and protection mechanism in your file system. So having seen about your file, the file system structure, the next thing that we have is about your file system implementation. So the hard disk provides the bulk storage on which the file system is maintained. Now let us see the layer file system. That is, the file system by itself is composed of many different layers. Every level in the design uses the features of the lower level layer to create a new feature that it could be used by the higher level layer. So in this layer system we have 4 layers: IO control, basic file system, file organization module, and logic file system. Let us see what each layer offers. So starting with the bottommost layer. Now the bottommost layer is the IO control. You can see here you have the application, and the application you can be reading, writing, or you can do any operations on the file with the help of the device. Now if I have a file, I want to write to the file, I would be needing your IO devices. So what happens with the IO controller is what we will see. So IO controller consists of a device driver and interrupt handlers to transfer the information between the main memory and the disk system. The device driver can be thought as a translator. It takes the high level input command and it is going to transfer it to the hardware specific instruction. That is, if the device if it wants to read or write a data to a particular block, it tells retrieve the block with number say 510. Now that high level command is translated. Now that is the input the device driver has, which will be converted into a low level hardware specific instruction that are used by the hardware controller, which interfaces the IO device to the rest of the system. The device driver usually writes a specific bit pattern to a special location in the IO controller's memory to tell the controller which device location to act on and what action should be taken. So this is the role of the IO controller. Now the IO controller is going to support the basic file system. So the basic file system needs only to issue a generic command to an appropriate driver to read and write the physical block on the disk. Each physical block is identified by the disk address. Now what is the disk address? On a logical note or a logical view, we say the data are all divided into blocks on the disk, but in reality the disk address would be the drive. If I say the hard disk, if there are multiple hard disk in the system, what is the hard disk number, and in that hard disk which cylinder, which track and which sector exactly the data is sitting. So this disk address should be identified. So the basic file system layer also manages the memory buffers and caches that hold various file system, directory and data blocks. A block in the buffer is allocated before the transfer of a disk block can occur. When the buffer is full, the buffer manager must find more buffer memory and free up the buffer space to allow the requested I/O to complete. The next one that we have is the file organization module, which will the basic file system shall be supporting the file organization module. The module knows about the files, their logical blocks as well as the physical blocks. By knowing the type of file location used and the location of the file organization module can translate the logical block address to the physical block address for the basic file system to transfer. It also includes free space manager, which tracks the allocated blocks and provides these blocks to the file organization module when requested. So the last layer that we have is the logical file system. So the logical file system manages the metadata information. So when I say metadata, it includes the file system structure, the content, the actual data, and all of it. So the logical file system manages the directory structure to provide the file organization module with the information that later needs for the symbolic file name. It also maintains a file control block. Just like in the process, we saw to the process control block that contains some more information about the process. Here we have a file control block that contains the information about the file, which has the location, the file content. You can see the dates when it was created, accessed, written, file permissions, and the data block pointers. So these are the some information that pertains to the file control block. We can see it up to down or bottom up. So the application could be seeing the logical file system. So the logical file system maintains a table, that is maintains a structure, that is your file control block, and this again can see the file organization module, which converts this logical address of the block to the physical address and also manages the free space. And we have the basic file system, which takes this physical address and it is going to manage with reading and writing, and then to read and write again using the I/O controller, managing with the disk and the main memory, and finally the device. And we see it from the device perspective. It could see the I/O controller, basic file system, file organization module, and then goes up to the application program. In the next classes, we would be talking about your file system implementation in the memory. Thank you, students.